Congressman Paul, yet another question about electability. Do you have any, sir? There's always the question as to whether or not you are, in fact, viable. Your differences with the Republicans with the rest of the Republicans on this stage has raised questions about whether or not you can actually win the Republican nomination, sir.
I'm the most conservative member here. I have voted, against more spending and waste in government than anybody else. So you're suggesting that I'm not electable and the Republicans don't want me because I'm a strict fiscal conservative?
No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached a third of its national income. Today, 37 cents out of every dollar earned in this country is the tax collector's share. And yet our government continues to spend $17 million a day more than the government takes in.
The lower the taxes, the better, and I think cutting taxes would be beneficial, but we should find places where we could cut spending as well, because eventually a deficit can be very, very harmful.
We haven't balanced our budget 28 out of the last 34 years. We've raised our debt limit 3 times in the last 12 months. And now our national debt is 1.5 times bigger than all the combined debts of all the nations of the world.
If you look at the price of oil in the last 10 years, if you look at it in terms of dollars, it went up 350%. If you look at it in euros, it went up about 200%. If you look at it in the price of gold, it stayed flat. It's the inflation, it's the printing of money, it's the destruction of the value of the dollar.
And we've just had announced that the dollar of 1939 will now purchase 45 cents in its total value.
When you destroy a currency by creating money out of thin air to pay the bill, the value of the dollar goes down and people get hit with a higher cost of living.
In addition, was Barry Goldwater so irresponsible when he suggested that our government give up its program of deliberate planned inflation, so that when you do get your Social Security pension, a dollar will buy a dollar's worth and not 45 cents worth? They've called it insurance to us in 100 million pieces of literature. But then they appeared before the Supreme Court, and they testified it was a welfare program. They only used the term insurance to sell it to the people. And they said Social Security dues are a tax for the general use of the government. And the government has used that tax. There is no fund. Because Robert Byers, the actuarial head, appeared before a congressional committee and admitted that Social Security, as of this moment, is $298 billion in the hole.
It's a mess, and it proves that the government is not very good at central economic planning, even for retirement. But the money was taken from the people with good intention, and we should do our best to return it to those that have taken it. But we need to allow the young people to just flat out get out of the system, because I'll tell you what, if you have the government managing these accounts, it's not going to work.
No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. So government programs once launched never disappear. Actually, a government bureau is the nearest thing to eternal life we'll ever see on this earth.
And why should we not be talking about foreign policy that used to be the part of the Republican Party?
As for the peace that we would preserve, I wonder who among us would like to approach the wife or mother whose husband or son has died in South Vietnam and ask them if they think this is a peace that should be maintained indefinitely.
Let me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here?
Do they mean peace, or do they mean we just want to be left in peace? There can be no real peace while one American is dying someplace in the world for the rest of us.
Republicans were elected to end the Korean War. The Republicans were elected to end the Vietnam War. There's a strong tradition of being anti-war in the Republican Party. It is the constitutional position. It is the advice of the founders to follow a non-interventionist foreign policy.
But we're against doling out money government to government, creating bureaucracy, if not socialism, all over the world. We set out to help 19 countries. We're helping 107. We've spent $146 billion.
We can cut by looking at our foreign policy. We maintain an empire which we can't afford. We have 700 bases overseas. We are in 130 countries. We cut there.
When Ronald Reagan became a Republican, he said he hadn't left the Democratic Party, the Democrats had left him. Given your differences with the other gentlemen on the stage, has the Republican Party left you? Have these gentlemen left the Republican Party?
Well, I think in many ways they haven't followed our platform and they don't follow the Constitution. So they're really not following a conservative viewpoint.
They also knew, those founding fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy.
Yes, I think in many ways we have become big spenders. Republicans are the big spenders. They're big government conservatives. They're part of the neoconservative movement. They've lost their traditions about traditional conservatism and the Constitution.
This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
And now, all of a sudden, just in this short period of time, we have accepted the Democrats' position on foreign policy, on entitlements, on deficits. I mean, we have lost our way.
Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government. And freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment.
No, I think that the position of the Republican Party today has not fulfilled their traditions, and that's why we lost last year. And if we don't go back to our traditions and believe in the Constitution, limited government, personal liberties, and a foreign policy that's non-interventionist that won't bankrupt us so that we can defend this country, we can't even defend our own.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
So where have we gone? I think we've lost our way. And then the insinuation that I am less Republican because of that?